Once again, you're gonna open the news and read something unpleasant. Your mind may twist. You may ask, what about? And I'll tell you what about. Let me compare 3 genocides committed in the last 3 decades in Rwanda, Serbia, and by Russians. You've seen the videos and photos from Bucha, Irpin, Yasnogorodka, and other small villages around Kiev. Women were raped, men were executed with shots in their head, civilian infrastructure was bombed. And now you may ask yourself, who is to blame? We constantly open the news and we read that Russians should be pitied, that they didn't choose Putin, that they are not responsible for his crimes and they are trying to fight with blank posters. But there is one cynical idea about it. They are treated like children who are not responsible for their own choices. Let me give you 10 reasons why you need to change your opinion and stop petting them for their own decisions.
The idea that makes every war perpetrator look like a child not guilty of his or her crimes. How so? You may believe that they are brainwashed, zombified, that they don't know the truth, that even if they know the truth, it's biased by their TV. Well, I picked the examples where it's not true, where the popular support actually created its own leaders. For instance, Putin in 1999, when the power was passed to him, had only 4% of support until he said that the Chechens who won the first war will die in toilets. Milosevic was a kind of mild leader until in 1995 he shifted towards far-right politics and became one of the biggest killers in the 20th century, 1999. The same with Rwanda, where the dominant group killed the Tutsi population in a civil war, and they're still proud of it. You can see it in their pop songs and in their folklore. This is what proves that these leaders are not the one who create the problem. They are the one who just represent the will of people. It's not enough to get rid of them, to topple their governments, to change the situation. Feature number 2 that you always encounter when you're dealing with a war crime, especially a genocide. It's the denial. Since it's a crime, a criminal wants to get rid of any traces that it happened. The whole point of a genocide is to get rid of a competitor for ideology in a non-political way. It cannot be politicized because it's about killing. You can see in 3 case studies. Rwanda denies the genocide, Serbia denies, and Russia denied the genocide in Chechnya. The journalist who reported on that, Politkovskaya, was killed for Putin's birthday, and now the genocide in Ukraine is denied live. There is no mistake. This is exactly how it's framed and happens with the countries that decided to go this direction. If you're talking to a democratic skeptic, ask them about the Ukrainians, the Chechens, the Tutsi, the Bosnians. You'll encounter a paradox that for some reason there is a justification for a war crime. How so? Because some lives do not matter. They are less valuable than ideologies. This is the first sign that you're dealing with a hybrid subject. Someone who just tries to steal your own values to prove that something is less a crime. George Orwell was definitely right that there is the seed of totalitarian thinking in liberalism. And there is a way to justify a war crime without denying it. The first way to go is so-called post-truth. The claim that the reality is fake and there is no possibility to decide whose point of view is truer. This is the way far-right Serbians justify the killings of Bosnians. They speak the language of Orthodox Church, of a crusade against the dirty people. This is the way Russian professors speak of Ukrainians, telling that they need to denazify and liberate Ukraine from its own ideology. This is the way, of course, the Rwanda government went against its minority, Tutsi, saying that they are less human than others. The language of crusade is the language of the post-truth, that we have different languages in which one thing means something else in the other. It's like the translation of values becomes cultural rather than universal for all humans. The other way to justify a war crime such as genocide is to apply whataboutism. This is the tactic when someone talks about the world in general instead of refuting an argument about the crime that happened. Usually it's a huge stretch. Once you see a posting about Ukraine, there is a bot saying, what about Afghan, what about Syria, what about North Korea, and so forth. Whataboutism is not like playing chess. It's more like twisting the same idea all around. It's like if someone did it, why our imperialism is worse? Russia really likes to speak of NATO bombing Serbia, while of course forgetting that they did it because Serbia started a genocide against Bosnians. Now there is a lot of proof that Russians invest money in Asian and African bot farms that ask this question constantly under every publication on Ukraine. What about? And I found a way to respond to this. I post beforehand, what about Chechnya? What about Syria? What about Afghanistan? These are three imperialistic wars that Russia started and never responded for its crimes. Probably because of that, it continues to commit more.
А я сейчас вам покажу, откуда на Беларусь готовилось нападение.
A subnote to whataboutism is actually saying that a genocide was a preventive action. Russians do this all the time, and in Serbia, Alexander Vucic and the media that he controls even posted that Ukraine attacked Russia. This is so important to be a defender, even committing a war crime for them, that they're stretching the reality so much that they don't even care that they will be held accountable for that too. Remember about this, when you try to infantilize war crimes, they are done in the plain sight. They are done openly. And if you continue to buy into whataboutism, you support them. And this is your choice. Yeah, this is your choice. Argument number 5 that protects people who live in the countries that commit war crimes, claiming that they're helpless. Well, maybe it's harder to say about Rwanda in 1994, where Juvenal Habyarimana got 98% of support. But it's quite easy to see in Serbia, where Milosevic not only got support in his elections, but the next leader got really high support, being the representative of far-right movement, SDS. Similarly, in Russia, there was a huge chance for that country to change in the 90s. There were lots of democratic movements, but people voted for Putin and the communists. The communists got like 30%, while the opposition leader, Yavlinsky, who led the party Yabloko, got only 5%. The people who supported the private property, the economic changes, they were unpopular. They were the problem for the society. So the people who voted for Putin as well as for Vucic and Milosevic they know what they're choosing. They pick the people who look like them.
So argument number 6, telling that culture and politics are absolute different entities. I'm an expert in Russian culture, and I can tell you that from the 17th century until now, there are lots of instances when we see that Russians as neighbors try to erase any difference with Ukrainians to capture their territories, to appropriate their culture. Let me just mention the 20th century. From 1927 to 1933, the executed renaissance of Ukrainian elites. 1932-33, Holodomor, the famine, the destruction of Ukrainian village as a phenomenon. 100,000 Ukrainians sent to Siberia and executed just for being nationalists. The last victim was a poet, Vasil Stus, in 1988, during Perestroika, the period of liberalization. But this liberalization never happened towards Ukraine. The epitomic image of Russian culture is the film by a famous propagandist Balabanov, Brother. It's about a guy who goes to the US, picks up a Russian prostitute and takes her back home while killing lots of people. There is a moment when his gang, the gang of this brother, kills Ukrainians and says, "We will kill you at the toilets." It's a reference to Putin's words about the Muslims in Russia. This is like a circular point of Russians using the same ideas and language in culture and politics. It's quite disturbing that lots of Ukrainians actually bought into that film because there was Ukrainian music. There should be definitely a change in how Ukrainians perceive Russian culture, because for really long they were taught a self-defeating narrative that there is no difference between culture and politics. There is. And culture is part of identity. We cannot watch Russian films and read Russian imperialist literature from the 19th and 20th and 21st century and not be subjected to war crimes. We become less humans, I guess. And so, argument number 7, that is paradoxically used to say that Russia has its right to bully us. They're bigger. We provoke them by choosing our separate path. And I hear it from Serbians. Well, probably if there was a bot farm in Rwanda, they would post the same thing. This is how you see bullies and rapists online. Maybe they're real, maybe they are bots and trolls, but the whole point is that if you allow somebody to think in a far-right way, they will take what they want without regarding for methods. This is the way to expose the politics that really rely on force and they don't look into morals. But politics without morals are no longer politics. This is the definition of diplomacy. If you don't speak, but you shoot, there is no culture too. So once again, I ask you to reconsider. Do you really want Russians to be victimized? Do you want to think about Serbians being victims of NATO? Do you want to think of Rwanda as the place where that Tutsi changed anything for better? This is your moral decision. Thank you for watching. And if you disagree, go fuck yourself. But if you agree, please comment, because YouTube is the place where we contemplate ideas. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.
Алло, ты тут?
Ладно.
Путин сказал, если до 10 мая нихуя не сделаем, блядь, вот все нахуй с землей сравниваем, блядь. Ну, я типа, что-то глобальные меры, блядь. Там едешь, что тут говорят, блядь, вроде уже тоже такой класс есть, что рубежная вроде еще сейчас пытаемся освободить, а россиянский сердонит с землей сравнивать. Уже не буду пытаться. Короче, такое, блядь. Ну, а и наши контрактники тоже.